Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for your acknowledgement. Thanks for coming out tonight on a rather hot night, a few days before Christmas. It's great to see so many people here, and it's great to back up to the Melbourne Football Club. I just want to get one small thing out of the way if I can. A matter that some of you in this room tonight may not have got your notice of annual general meeting within 21 days of tonight's date. I just want to clarify, we lodged everything in time for it to be mailed out to you, but we ran into a problem with our mail house who acknowledged their failings in this area, and as a result some of you may have got that 3 to 7 days late, for which we apologise. We were aware of that issue before it hit the mail, or as it was at the mail house, and we took every action we could to try and mitigate that by sending out email notices to people, understanding that we don't have email addresses for everybody, and also putting it on the website. But we also checked the Corporations Act and the club's constitution that deals with procedural irregularity or accidental omission. In fact, our constitution, clause 16.9, deals with accidental omission, which if you fail to get the notice out on time due to accident, it doesn't invalidate the meeting or anything that's conducted at that meeting. But I still think it's worth an apology. So on behalf of us and our mail house, they won't do it again, I'm convinced of that. But we had a few tighter timelines this year, and that's what happened. So my role tonight is to provide an oversight of the 2015 accounts and then provide a brief business update on what I think the key issues are and the outlook for 2016 beyond. So as a general comment, I'd say that this year was a year in which we continued what we started to do in 2013, and that is to positively rebuild the club. And whereas we'll always want to do better than we have done this year, I feel somewhat satisfied because we have done what I said we would achieve, both on and off the field. And I'll just cover that as we go through this meeting. I've got a series of slides for you. The 2015 annual accounts were made available to members, and I'll take them as, I might just stop that for a minute. The 2015 annual accounts were made available to members, and I'll take them as having been read rather than make a detailed presentation. And I would like to provide an overview of the business issues behind the results, and members of course have the opportunity to ask questions about the accounts later in this meeting. In terms of the reported result of $562,000 profit, obviously that is pleasing. However, it's not about the individual result. The more pleasing aspect for me is that it affirms what I said at the 2013 annual general meeting of what was possible for this club. We had just reported a $3 million loss, but I said I was positive about the club's future from a commercial perspective. And I said we will set ourselves to trade positively in 2014 and 15, albeit at marginal levels, while we continue to build the club both strategically and, more importantly, in football. And I'm very confident we are doing that. And the result for 2015 for me and my executive is just a signpost that we are on the right road. But we've still got some distance left in that journey. So to look at the 2015 results, I've put, by way of comparison, results for 3 years up there because that's the journey we've been on from a commercial perspective as well. So members can get the total perspective of what's been achieved over these last 2 years in particular. So in 2015, overall revenue increased by, if that's working, it's not, $2.4 million from 2014 to 2015, and it has increased by $5 million since 2013. What's really important underneath that figure is that the club generated revenue, that is the revenue we make from football, has increased by $3 million. And that includes increased match receipts of about $1.5 million, increased net sponsorship of about $700,000, and increased net membership of about $500,000. The revenue from the AFL has increased by $1.25 million over the last year, as you can see, from 14 to 15. And I just want to remind everybody, and particularly if you're wanting to have debates with your mates who barrack for other football clubs, the AFL one-off grant they gave us of $1.45 million in 2013 was a one-off grant to restructure this football club, and it's not in those figures up there. So 380,000 of that increase in 2015 was in the base distribution that all clubs receive, and that goes towards funding the increase in the total player payments. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. The increased funding from the AFL's new equalisation model was 870,000. That's a revenue sharing model where those clubs with a lot give a bit into a pool, so the clubs that have got structural disadvantages get something back. All of this has been invested in football, as you will see. All of that increase plus more from the AFL has been invested in football, and that was the intent of that equalisation model, so that all clubs had an opportunity to compete on a level playing field. The point I want to make to you, as you'll see shortly, is our profit result is not the result of AFL funding. Our increased football investment in part is due to the AFL. This slide here shows you why we've been able to make a profit. We have continued to invest in football, which has increased $1.65 million from 2014, which is a pretty decent increase. That included player payments of $900,000. Remembering what I just said, the AFL only contributed $380,000 towards that increase. But we've also increased investment in player development of $750,000, which we believe is critical, along with good list management for ultimate success. The operating expenditure, which is that second line, has remained virtually constant since 2013, despite increasing club revenues by $3 million. That is the reason we have been able to invest more in football, and that is the reason we've been able to report profits over the last 2 years. So we've increased the revenues without increasing the costs of generating those revenues. In fact, we've kept them constant. We've achieved that through the management restructure that we undertook in 2013. We're constantly looking at ways to increase efficiency within our operations, and we've started to generate sustainable ongoing revenues over a period. So that's the important thing, I think, from these profit results. Gaming expenditure continues to increase in line with gaming revenue. So we end up with that profit result of $562,000 compared to $161,000 last year, and in 2013 a loss of $1.7 million in operating profit. Overall $3 million. So that's a fairly good result. What's also good up there is a positive operating cash flow of $2.5 million, which is an improvement of $1.4 million over 2014 and over $4 million since 2013. But whilst that's encouraging, I just want to flag something about the cash flow. We are undertaking a major and long overdue refurbishment of the Leoke Club with a total capital expenditure in excess of $1 million. We agreed with Westpac to delay the debt repayment of $600,000 in 2015, which equates to 3/4 of debt repayments, 3/4 at $200,000 a quarter, to help fund this refurbishment. That is actually a sign of total confidence by Westpac in what we're doing at this football club. Delays in planning and approvals meant the bulk of the work is being done right now and paid for in financial year 2016, and that did have a positive impact on our total 2015 cash flow. In other words, we didn't spend all the money we thought we would. The forecast cash and debt balances at the end of 2016 will reflect this as full debt repayment recommences. So I hope when I stand up here in 12 months' time and the cash position is not quite as good, you'll remember why. But overall, that's a pretty pleasing result. The balance sheet is a little bit more cluttered on that slide, but we have net assets of $4.1 million, up from $3.6 million last year, and as we say, it's underwritten. The value of those net assets is underwritten by a high-quality asset in land at the Bentley Club that is still in the books at acquisition cost of as at 2011 of $8.7 million. The real value of that has probably increased since then. You'll notice that total assets have decreased by $1 million since 2013. That's due to two things. One is the amortisation of the gaming machine entitlements, down from $2.9 million to $2.2 million. They're being amortised over a 10-year period, and so the level is just reducing each year. And the depreciation of fixed assets that we've undertaken over the year without any new capital expenditure. Gaming debt reduced by only $200,000 in 2015, reflecting my earlier comment about the delay for the Lee Oak refurbishment, but it's still reduced by $1 million since 2013, and total debt is still reduced by $2 million since 2013. So I guess the way to put it is gaming debt is good debt. It's based on assets generating profits for us. I can just talk briefly about the outlook. We have reasonably conservative forecasts over the next 2 years. We expect an improvement in team performance, and that will drive club-generated revenue over the next 2 years. You can see that grey line at the bottom growing, but it's not growing. We're not forecasting crazy numbers. We're budgeting for a profit next year in the order of $250,000 to $300,000 in 2016. We've always thought over the last 2 years that assuming the status quo of our operations, we were going to see a significant uplift in profit in 2017 and an accelerated reduction of debt. The AFL, though, has started to introduce or change the strategic agenda as far as it relates to clubs, and that status quo is now not a realistic assumption. Most of those changes will have a very positive impact on the club, but will also require investment of resources. So it's not totally clear right now what that impact will be, because the AFL haven't actually finalised those strategic policies. There's 3 of them to talk about. One is the introduction of women's football in 2017 with a view of a full national competition by 2020, and we will be in that mix by virtue of everything we've done so far in women's football. The introduction of an Indigenous and Multicultural Talent Academy for each club by 2017, which basically gives us the opportunity to work in a zone within Melbourne and possibly somewhere in the Northern Territory, trying to develop more Indigenous and multicultural talent to introduce new people into our game. And the third one is a review of the second-tier competition, otherwise known now as the VFL, which may have an impact on how all clubs field their second-tier teams and associated increased resources and funding that might be required from all of that. All those 3 things really offer a great opportunity for this club, but they will take an investment of resources and funding. And I'm sure we can do that within the funding, within the profit parameters that we expect in 2017. So that's a good thing. So as you can see over the right-hand side of that slide, we expect to still further reduce debt over the next 2 years. I had previously reported that I expected all gaming and gaming machine entitlement debt to be cleared by the end of 2017, but with the delay this year of that repayment for the Lee Oak refurbishment, that extinguishing the debt will flow into 2017. But still, we're forecasting total debt will be at about $4 million by the end of 2017 and down from over $8 million at the end of 2013. So I've always said I'm being positive about the commercial future of this football club. I know that wasn't the case a couple of years ago. People didn't feel that, but I've always felt that. I thought, getting together good people and starting to build the strategy that we want to build, I always have every confidence this football club had a bright future, a sustainable future, and I'm not seeing anything to suggest otherwise. So that's an overview of the accounts, and as I said, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions about the accounts itself if you want to later on. I just want to touch on 2 other very important strategic issues for the club, namely football and our brand strategy. As the Chairman said, Simon Goodwin will report to members of what's happening in some detail in the football department, including introducing the younger players. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but I do want to make some key points. We did aim to win 7 games for the year. That was our own internal objective, and we did that. Now, that may not sound overly ambitious, but it was realistic in our view based on recent seasons' performance and where the development of our younger players is at. In no way am I suggesting we're satisfied with that. We had some disappointing games, and we could have and should have won more. But we did improve, and we've had some important wins against teams that participated in the finals. Our list management over recent years has been very good. We've seen this in 2015 with the performances of Hogan and Brayshaw in the Rising Star, but the extent of our young talent brought into the club over the last 3 to 4 years is at last being recognised by AFL pundits. To be frank, until we did what we managed to do in the trade this year and get picks 3 and 7, I'm not sure they actually worked out what had been done over the last 3 to 4 years by Todd Viney and Josh Marnie and the recruiting team. But I think they've had a light bulb moment, and I think they understand the quality of the young talent that's now been brought into the club. And we showed that in 2015 trade period when we led other clubs. And it's a great feeling to have Melbourne Football Club lead other clubs in assessing the impact of the new point system for the father, son and academy players, and be able to pick up 2 top 10 draft picks, as well as a couple of talented players along the way. But young talent on its own is not enough. They need to be developed and coached into very good AFL players. And this is an area that Melbourne Football Club has lacked up to not so long ago. But we've substantially increased our investment in this area, as I said, and brought in coaches like Simon Goodwin and Brendan McCartney and devoted more resources and a better structure to the KCVFL system. And above all, we continue to develop the culture around the club, both in the football department and generally around all parts of the club. The players are starting to understand what it means for them to drive the standards on and off the field. That it's not a couple of people at the top of the club that is going to change this club, but it's the players and the importance of them in achieving success. Nathan Jones is totally committed to this process, and under him we are transitioning the leadership group. I'm very confident about the path we are on in football, but it's not designed for immediate success. It is designed for sustained success, and I can't actually promise you when that's going to happen. I also want to talk about our brand strategy. I spoke last year about our brand, that it was one of our 6 strategic pillars in our new strategic plan. And I'm talking about our brand first of all, not our logo. Our brand says who we are. It's those few words that people use when they describe us. We looked at the future direction of our brand and in doing so have considered the simple brand truths that we now have. And I talked about these last year. We are the pioneers who started the game. Our home is the MCG, and we own the name Melbourne. And we're the only football club in the AFL that owns the name Melbourne. And there's some other clubs in some other codes that might think they own the name Melbourne, but AFL owns this town, so we own Melbourne. In developing a brand strategy, we know we need to respect our history and our traditions. We also know we needed to reconnect with our heartland, and we started that in 2015. But we also need to talk to more people, more young people, and a more diverse group of people. We need to connect to all people who take pride in calling Melbourne their home, and we need to do that so we can grow this club. This city has a worldwide reputation as a great city, a livable city, a sporting capital. To talk to more people who live in the city and more people who come to the city, our club's identity needs to be synonymous with the city's. The prerequisite for achieving this, of course, is becoming a better football team. We cannot do this without being a good football team. And eventually a great football team. That is a non-negotiable. But I said last year that we'll start making this connection with the city more obvious in 2015 and build on it throughout the next few years. That brand strategy also needed to look at our visual identity, or if you like, our logo. Now, I know the Melbourne Football Club has had quite a few logos in recent years. Jen Watt tells me about as many as CEOs. And so we were sensitive about that. We didn't want to change it for the sake of it. We wanted to change it only if the current logo did not match our future brand aspirations, and only if we could develop a better option. So when we looked at it, we decided the old logo spoke to the past. It didn't reflect our brand strategy of the future. It didn't speak to modern Melbourne, and it didn't speak to future generations. And it wasn't bold when it was lined up against our 17 competitors. So we look for a change. So you can see in that logo the word Melbourne's prominent. The initials are still there, but there's a more modern version of them, and if you look closely, I hope you have, that red triangle is still down the bottom underneath the F. So we've kept things that are important to this football club, but we think that will talk to a whole broader range of people and generations as well. And many of you will be aware that we launched this new logo on the 12th of November, and we did so by taking over the city of Melbourne. That is a metaphor for what we want to do as a club over the next decade. Take over the city so the name Melbourne becomes synonymous with the Melbourne Football Club. Let me assure you, however, that this can only happen, again, if we are a very good football team on a sustainable basis, and that still remains our driving purpose. We want you to be proud of your club, and it's not the brand so much and the logo so much, it's the fact that Melbourne Football Club got off its backside and showed some innovation and pioneered approach out into the city to do something. And we've had some fantastic feedback from our own people, former players, who are just delighted to see that we're up and about. So the whole thing was a great success, and congratulations to Jen and her team who put most of that together. And I'll finish up by saying that I just want to acknowledge my executive and the coaches and the staff for their efforts throughout 2015. They deserve all the credit for the progress this club is making, and members should have every confidence in them. And to the board and chairman Glenn Bartlett, who have steered the club from a governance perspective and supported management and the football department. There is a strong belief now within this club that it can be successful again. We have a way to go to become respected and great, but I'm confident we will. To the members, thanks for your support. It is vital to this club. Have a safe Christmas and a footy good year. Thank you.